Making a top 10 teaching tips video, covering some different social science topics, as well as making it applicable to teachers, simple to understand, and hopefully applicable to your classroom. All right, so first thing, beyond scores. This is us deciding what is important first, the test scores or the student. And I think of this as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, if a student doesn't have their basic needs met, then they are not actually going to be able to build upon the foundation in the triangle to succeed to their fullest potential. I see this in a lot of different cultural trends across my school, which is what we've talked about within my ACE coursework. I've seen within my school, chronic absences and how that impacts students' low scores. And then I've also seen that there's a discrepancy between who is experiencing these chronic absences and what population it is directly affecting. I also see this in relation to the RTI process and interventions and referrals into the special education team in the special education realm. And I think it's really important to talk about how we need to come together as educators and treat our students as humans first. We need to make sure that their emotions are met. We need to make sure they've gotten sleep, and we need to make sure that they've eaten, because those are the basic things that are going to help them succeed in school. And if those aren't met and they don't feel safe with you, then there's no way they're going to perform a multiplication assignment for you or a division assignment for you. It's all about the relationship and all about understanding their brain. Teaching tip number two, active learning styles and how the body plays a role in learning. So I think it's really important as educators for us to apply different modes of learning within a school day so that all students have the opportunity to connect with something and feel success in their learning. This could be as simple as incorporating music into your day, but it could also be practicing your times tables by doing jumping jacks or stretching and practicing the long vowel with the silent E, stretching your legs and reaching for the long A in the word lake. And remembering that the E is making you have super flexible powers. Um, you got to just make it fun. You got to make it engaging. I am a primary education teacher mostly, but right now I am teaching high school. And so this was a bit challenging because I was like, how do I apply this to my teaching? But it's the same. Learning, moving, that's important in teaching. It's important for kiddos to get a break in their learning processes and be able to move. Um, Teaching tip number three I want to talk about is how we can incorporate music as an emotional aid in learning and reflecting on our student experiences and our own experiences. So it's important that we incorporate, I mean, music is math, right? And so it also makes us feel really good and feel calm and feel regulated. And with that, those two things together, we could really have a successful classroom. So it's important to talk about how um, you create that student-centered learning space. Something that we talked about within our ACE coursework was inquiry-based learning. We can use music, that's my cat, sorry. We can use music to teach other skills and other academics. It's been proven that if you create a song about something, it sticks in your brain. That's how I know how many pints are in a quart. That's how I know my planets. That's how I know the first 100 numbers of pi. It's all music. So really trying to incorporate music into any aspect of your teaching allows for that inquiry-based learning and allows for teachers and students to have success. Teaching tip number four. This relates to active learning styles, which is what we've discussed a lot in my ACE coursework. And I want to specifically talk about how we can root our education within our nature experiences. There is a serious power of having a school forest, having a school garden, growing your own food, eating the food that you grew, that you worked for. It allows for students to decrease their stress, to feel a sense of empowerment and active engagement in their learning. And it also allows them to connect with nature. And this is a great opportunity to incorporate Indigenous perspectives and traditional land knowledge into these activities as well. Teaching tip number 5. This one's for the teachers. Teacher burnout is student burnout. How a teacher feels and how their well-being is portrayed, that shapes student well-being as well. So, how do we support our colleagues? How do we support ourselves? A lot of things that we've talked about throughout our ACE coursework was collaborative teaching. How do we allow ourselves to work with others that are in our professional field for the better advancement of our students? Um, I relate this to what we've talked about in our ACE coursework of organic solidarity and creating a classroom or a school environment where the expectation is that you take care of one another. And so organic solidarity is showing support for teachers, well-being of the entire school, division of labor, right? You do this for the workload, you do this for the workload, you do this for the workload. And when we come together, we make a beautiful school. Another area that this could target is organizational work conformity. Make the expectation that you take care of one another. If you need to tap out with a teacher and you need 2 minutes, take those 2 minutes because honestly, you deserve those 2 minutes. Number 6, sign language. Number 6 is the hidden curriculum of social skills, emotional regulation, anything under the SEL realm. Okay. And this is really important because I remember going to school, my SEL experiences were very limited and they were kind of just natural within my classroom setting. And I didn't really have a scope and sequence of how to process emotions. And I turned out fine, but I think that having those skills at a younger age could have really helped me problem solve through the younger and transitional age years of my life. So, how do we do this? Well, create structured opportunities for social emotional skills, but also unstructured. Let the students work together in a natural experience and see how they work together. This can build social cohesion, which is what is we talked about immensely in my ACE coursework. This allows for students and teachers to build relationships, build a community within the school. This could be with teachers and parents as well. And this improves the social solidarity of the school, knowing that you guys are all together and fighting for the same cause, or knowing that everybody in the school is looking out for the student's best interest. Number 7, um, number 7 is talking about how to create an inclusive classroom. So, how do we create an inclusive classroom that eliminates isolation of students, eliminates bullying, stigma, anything like that? It's really important to teach those skills early on because those are life skills. Those are skills that students are going to take with them for a really long time. And so it's important to start social cohesion amongst diverse groups at a very young age so that that disconnect doesn't grow and that stigma doesn't grow as they grow. Um, I think of the relating to my coursework, I think of conflict theory here. Um, and specifically think about how conflict theory is played out in school and how it impacts students at different social cohorts and social groups amongst the social hierarchy scale. Something else that we've talked about a lot in our coursework was the bystander effect and polarization and how that impacts group dynamics. Um, I think it's important to teach students at a young age to advocate for themselves, advocate for their friends, and advocate for the people that they would not expect they wouldn't advocate for typically. It's important to advocate for everyone, especially if you see an injustice happening and teaching that how the bystander effect actually plays out in school early on and allowing teachers and kids to call it out can actually promote the disablement of it occurring within the social hierarchy. Teaching tip number 8. How do we create our community within school and connect it to home? Schools thrive when the families and the communities that surround them co-create this culture of safety, security, and connection amongst the group. Another example, or this is another example of group dynamics, right, amongst different populations. And how do you have three separate groups that are very unique in needs and abilities work together for the common good for the student? It's very difficult. And so, how do we get there? Well, we establish clear boundaries. We create an inclusive and accessible space. We allow students that experience barriers to access. We remove those barriers for them so that they can engage in the learning too. And this goes with parents. If there is a barrier to access for a parent being able to read a story to their class, tailor the instruction. Allow the parent to read page after page and page with their student and switch off. Or pick a book that is more, um, qualitative and informed. So, like a play or a speech or something that they're familiar with, a common story that they can kind of utilize their own background knowledge to continue the activity. It's important to create those supports because the more supports you provide for the people that are around you, the more they're willing to take them. All right. Number 9, how do we incorporate art and play and these other creative outlets into our day and allow them to expand on our academic and social success? I see this specifically resonating in the social justice realm. I think that these tools and different learning materials are a great opportunity for student-centered planning and student-centered learning to occur, where those students are the active agents in their education plan, within their social advocacy plan within their school, which will follow them through their transitional years and their post-secondary experiences, whatever they choose to do. So, social justice at a young age, um, teaching students that equality is not equity. It's not the same thing. Sometimes it is, but sometimes there are barriers to access that cause people to not get to the equal stance. I always think of the um the stepping stool of people looking over and watching a race, and they all are on the same size stepping stool, but they're different heights. And so, yes, they all got the same resource, but the shortest person still can't see because it's not tailored to them. It's not equitable for them. It's equal, but it's not equitable. And so it's really important to use creative expression to expand those abilities because um, we shouldn't see those creative experiences as extras or electives or anything like that. We should incorporate it into our core content learning because they actually are really cool skills that we can use to aid our learning. Teaching tip number 10. Um, the future is our children. Um, this is kind of a wrap up of what I've been talking about. We need to create a system in our education world where mental health, movement, nature, creativity, social connection, social solidarity, and academics are all intertwined and integrated into learning experiences for students so that they can have a more wholesome experience and learning time with their teacher and with their peers. So, with this ideology, we can create some different convergent and emergent norms, right? The convergent norm of schools is you take care of the children and you educate them and you make sure they get off that bus and on that bus when you go home. You right, you get them home, you teach them what they need to know, and you educate them. But what does that mean? What does that look like? So that's where I'm going to challenge us to say that the new emergent norm based on using these teaching tips can allow for accepting students for who they are, treating the whole child looking at all the different learning modes and how they can impact learning because they're all so important and essential in learning.